Starting Hamlet, we are one day behind schedule. And we made it up a whole lot more. I've been discovering teaching Hamlet to my 3 intro to lit courses, which I've been teaching for quite a while. This time around, I'm noticing all kinds of verbal links from one scene to a next. And I was thinking about this while I was walking my dog yesterday. Of Shakespeare's plays that I know well, this one seems to be, and I've not finished rereading it in these other courses yet, this one seems to be the most intricately structured and composed. I mean, everything ties together, which is why as I was walking towards class today, I thought, I wonder if I should just throw out the option of, let's just not worry about Lear and spend the next essentially like 8 days on Hamlet. But I don't want to do that because Lear's such a great play also. A lot bleaker than Hamlet. Anyways, we'll see what happens. I do want to make an announcement. And I thought about this before I handed out the exam sheet. I'm going to extend it. So rather than it being due a week from today, it'll be Tuesday the 2nd. That gives you 2 full weeks from when I handed it out.
I really appreciate it. I had 3 assignments do that same thing.
And I had no idea about any of that. I was just thinking I should have done 2 weeks. And I thought about 2 weeks when I did it. And I thought, 10 days is enough. But as Polonius says, old age doesn't remember what it's like being young. And it's been quite a while since I was in your seats, but I do remember what it was like. And I was probably a much worse student than any of you are, because bright sunny days like this, and I was gone. So, let's start with the introduction. Okay. Which I'm going to take some pot shots at. I mean, why not? David Bevington's dead and he can't talk back to me anyways. On the second page of the introduction, if you have the book, this is, 1092 in my edition, whatever. Bevington comments about Hamlet in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It's the paragraph that begins, "Something is indeed rotten in the state of Denmark." Okay? Talking about Claudius the murderer and everything devolves from that. Towards the end of that paragraph, actually, a little bit over half, talking about people in the kingdom, they do not know that he is a murderer. Okay? Specifically, he's referencing Polonius and these other courtiers of Claudius. From what we know, from what the text suggests, nobody knows how Claudius became king. Let me qualify it. They know how Hamlet Sr. died. Supposedly a snake bit him while he was sleeping in his garden. Okay? They don't know anything about Claudius's role in that. Okay? So he goes on and says, Hamlet, for his part, and I'm quoting from Bevington here, Hamlet, for his part, is so obsessed with the secret murder that he overreacts to those around him, rejecting overtures of friendship and becoming embittered, callous, brutal, and even violent. Okay? How many of you have read Hamlet before? Anybody? 1 or 2. How many of you have seen Hamlet? Any version. Okay? I take that back. Not any version.
Don't they say that The Lion King's like kind of a version of Hamlet, or very loosely?
Lion King? Yes. The basic story is Lion King. I was going to say the Franco Zeffirelli, Mel Gibson, as Hamlet says, after he speaks to the ghost, he'll wipe all Sawzall, memory, everything. Wipe that one from your memory. Just totally do away with it. Best Hamlet available? I think it might be on YouTube now, but I'm not positive, is a rehearsal filmed in 1964 with Richard Burton. Richard Burton as Hamlet. John Gielgud, I believe, as the ghost. Or Gielgud may have been Polonius, I can't remember which. And then a bunch of other actors and actresses you wouldn't be familiar with because they're all dead. But I think some of you probably know who Richard Burton was. It's hands down, it's the best. A couple of the more recent ones, can't remember his first name, last name, Scott. Played Moriarty in the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes series. Great actor. Tim Scott? No, that's the senator from South Carolina. Can't remember his first name. Anyways, it's not bad. Man, I'm drawing names. Doctor Who, Scottish actor. Nope. Real thick Scottish brogue accent.
Oh, he was the one that was also in Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire.
Oh, I have no idea. I blocked those out of my mind.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no, I know.
You know who I'm.
Was he in Good Omens?
Yes.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
Broadchurch, British crime drama. Anyways, his is pretty good. Hiddleston did one. Not bad. But Richard Burton, by every means, is by far the best. Okay. My point about this: if you're familiar with the play at all, how far have you gotten into it? Let me ask this.
I've read the whole thing.
You've read, has anybody gotten into Act 2? Okay. Well, as the introduction is supposed to prepare you for the text, I'm going to prepare you for the text. Hamlet has a reason, okay, to be, as he calls it, embittered, callous, brutal, and even violent. And I don't mean the reason is just because of the words he hears from the ghost. Quick synopsis. Play begins with a question. Who's there? All right? We hear a few characters. They talk about this thing they've seen. They see the ghost again. The ghost doesn't speak to them. They say, let's tell Hamlet. We have another long scene, which we're going to skip for a moment. They tell Hamlet. Hamlet says, I want to keep watch with you that night. He does. He sees the ghost. He speaks with the ghost. The ghost says, I'm the ghost of your dead father. I was murdered by your uncle / stepfather. All right? Hamlet goes crazy in one sense. I don't mean that literally. Okay? He says, oh, my prophetic soul. He knew something was wrong with the death of his father and the quick marriage of his mother. Okay? We see his new stepfather / uncle / king invite some of Hamlet's old friends, childhood friends. He sends them to kind of slyly, subtly feel out Hamlet for what is wrong. Everybody can see something's wrong with Hamlet. He's mourning too long, they think, for the death of his father. Okay? We'll get to that. Because of how long his father's been dead. Hamlet asks those two friends, why are you here? And they come, should we tell him? He goes, I'll tell you why you're here. You were sent for. You were sent for to try to figure out why I am so distracted. I don't know why I'm distracted, Hamlet tells them. Okay? He knows from the beginning his friends aren't there out of the kindness of their heart and good Christian charity. It is a Christian society, by the way. Okay? To say that Hamlet rejects overtures of friendship, to me, is ludicrous.
It wasn't friendship at all.
Because they're not, well, what he had in the past with them was friendship. But he hasn't seen them in a while. I mean, it would be like if my parents were alive, one of them calling up somebody that I knew literally 50 years ago, whom I've not seen in a long time, to come and talk to me. I'm not saying Hamlet is 62, okay? Big question for you, how old is Hamlet? We don't find out till Act 5. And it's probably gonna blow you away when you find out how old he is, based upon what is said about him and such during the earlier parts of the play, okay? So, he goes on, next paragraph, to talk about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They're boyhood friends of Hamlet, etc. Despite their, notice, seeming concern for Hamlet. We've talked about that word, seeming. Shakespeare, in this play, is going to beat that word out of all meaning. That is, he's going to so show what it means. And we're going to see it with Hamlet's second speech. His first speech is an aside to the audience. His second speech is in response to his mother saying, "Why seems it so particular with thee?" And the seems is talking about Hamlet's appearance, to his father's death. And he's going to launch onto this riff about seems, okay? He goes on, Bevington, towards the end of that long paragraph, he says, I don't know, about 10, 12 lines up from the bottom of it, they are, talking about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern still, they are as ignorant of Claudius's secret orders for the murder of Hamlet in England as they are of Claudius's real reason for wishing to be rid of his stepson. Question, are they? Are they ignorant of the orders that they are bearing to the King of England for Hamlet? Hamlet himself suggests they might not be entirely innocent.
Can you trust him though? Could it be part of his paranoia?
Interesting question. Is he paranoid?
Somewhat.
Define paranoia.
It's kind of
Always assuming the world's against you in a way.
Okay.
I think it's more unreal though. Like paranoia is about stuff that's not really happening.
Okay. It's an irrational fear that usually it's not that the world is against you. It's an irrational fear, suspicion that you're being watched. Or that someone is out to get you. Okay? I'm going to use a political example. I'm not saying anything positive or negative about this character. Don't misconstrue me. I'm trying to decide if I should. Is Donald Trump paranoid about the U.S. legal system? That is, does he have an irrational fear of it? The important part is irrational. Nixon was, had Nixon been tried, had Nixon had, what is it now, 91 counts.
He's recording his conversations then.
Okay? But he recorded his conversations, which turned out to be his undoing. Okay? The example with Nixon, I mean, there's a little problem in that everyone wasn't out to get Nixon, but going back to the 50s, the media hated Nixon because he's a staunch anti-communist. So he had that mentality. There's a big difference between Nixon and Reagan in that sense. Reagan was a staunch anti-communist, but he's a former Democrat who turned Republican. He turned more Republican, more conservative than Nixon ever dreamed to be, okay? And yet, even though the media hated hated Reagan, Reagan got along well with them because he had the cheery demeanor and such. Is Hamlet right, to use Sarah's words, if he is paranoid? Is he right to be paranoid? That is it rational or irrational fear that that everybody's out to get him or watching him?
I mean, I would suggest yes and no, because the fact.
Oh, quit waffling. Take a stance.
No. Because in reality, things are happening, things are against him, but the thing that actually proves it is that which is irrational, which is his father's ghost.
Okay? And I'm going to give solid textual evidence. Ophelia is going to say in the course of the play, she's going to refer to Hamlet as the observed of all observers. What does that sentence mean? The observed of all observers. Two things there. Everyone in Denmark is like, to use a Harry Potter reference since we alluded to it earlier, if I can come up with names again, good grief. Harry's aunt, Petunia, okay? She spends her days doing what we're told in the first book, the opening couple paragraphs. Sticking her nose in other people's business. She's looking over the fence, watching other people. That's what everybody in Denmark does. Okay? They're watching everybody else. And we're told Hamlet, of all the observers, that includes Hamlet, by the way, is what? The one most being watched. Okay? Could be a good reason for it. He's the prince. He's next in line for the throne. Okay? So, Bevington goes on. That Hamlet should ingeniously remove the secret commission from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's packet and substitute an order for their execution is ironically fitting, even though they are guiltless of having plotted Hamlet's death. That is, they haven't personally plotted against him, so they're not guilty of that. What might they be guilty of? They're the ones carrying the letters that say, upon receipt of this letter, kill Hamlet. Okay? A couple other things. He goes on in the rest of the introduction, page 1093, with the paragraph, this is several paragraphs on. Hold on just 1 second. No, take that back. The next paragraph, beginning with Polonius 2. Polonius 2 dies from meddling. Skip the next sentence. Yet Polonius's complicity in jaded court politics is deeper than his fatuous parental sententiousness might lead one to suppose. Okay? Here's the part I wanted to get to. His famous advice to his son, often quoted out of context as though it were wise counsel, is in fact a worldly gospel of self-interest and concern for appearances. Okay? I'm just going to ask you right now. When we get to that passage, look at it carefully and decide for yourselves, is it a worldly gospel of self-interest and concern for appearances? Or is it, in fact, wise counsel? Is it good advice? All right? He goes on, talks about Ophelia. Ophelia is more innocent than her father and brother and more truly affectionate toward Hamlet. She earns our sympathy because she is caught between the conflicting wills of the men who are supremely important to her. Her wooer, Hamlet, her father, and her brother. Obedient by instinct and training to patriarchal instruction, she is unprepared to cope with divided authority and so takes refuge in passivity. It struck me yesterday, either Tuesday or yesterday, in teaching one of my classes, How passive is Ophelia? We're going to see a scene where she is a willing participant in spying on Hamlet. We're going to see a scene where she willingly is the bait for Hamlet. Okay, she's kind of passive, yes. But she hears all this language in that scene. It's in Act 3, the beginning of Act 3. She hears all the language in that scene about what Claudius and Polonius are up to. And she never goes, stop. Okay? In fact, she's going to, in that scene, where she and Hamlet are alone, she's going to lie to his face. Okay? Trying to think how much of this other stuff I should go on to. Okay, we'll stop there with the introduction. A couple other kind of background things, however. Your introduction does mention Hamlet is probably the greatest example in English of revenge tragedy, the genre that it is. Thomas Kyd wrote the Spanish tragedy in 1587. Shakespeare writes this in 99 to 1600. It's first produced, it's performed in 1600. It gets published in a quarto edition in 1603, and then it gets I think another quarto edition is published after that, and then it gets published again in 1623. So Hamlet's first published in 1603, and I know there's at least the second is published again at least in 1623. I believe there is another quarto edition between 1603 and 1623. Shakespeare probably had nothing to do with this publication. It's probably stolen, okay? And he obviously had nothing to do with this one because he'd been dead for 7 years. Between Shakespeare's Hamlet, again, first performed 1600, and Kyd's Spanish tragedy, let me rephrase that, not between. Probably lying behind Kyd's Spanish tragedy is what's called in Hamlet. Means first, proto, okay? Because the Spanish tragedy has a lot of the same elements as our Hamlet, okay? Some of that's because it's a revenge tragedy, all right? The farthest back you can go with the story is a Danish writer named Saxo Grammaticus in his Gesta Danorum, which is the deeds of the Danes, essentially, that tells a story about Ambleth. That's the original of Hamlet, okay? And if I remember right, this story is set in somewhere around the 8th century. I mean, it's Viking times, okay? It's bloody. I mean, it's really bloody. This guy has no qualms about executing revenge. It's not a revenge tragedy because Denmark didn't know about revenge tragedy. Revenge tragedy comes from ancient Rome. Seneca is the greatest writer of revenge tragedies. And in a revenge tragedy, I don't remember if he goes into the characteristics. In a revenge tragedy, usually begins very early on, a ghost appears. A ghost tells a living family member, I was murdered, It's your job to avenge my death, okay? So, you have ghost, vengeance, violence. And in Shakespeare's version, let's say, you end up at the end of Act 5. Act 5, you end up with either 4 or 5 dead bodies on the stage. Throughout the play, if I counted correctly the other day, I think there's 9. 9 people get murdered or killed or unliving within the course of the play. Okay? One other comment, prefatory comment before we begin. I think I've mentioned this before. This is probably Shakespeare's most religious play. Okay? What you see in this play is the conflict, the tension between Catholic beliefs and Protestant beliefs. Has to be intentional. He makes reference to Calvinistic ideas, okay, and Catholic ideas. Purgatory, for example, we're going to see brought up. It won't be named, but the place is alluded to very early on, right? So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to look at that tension between those, because it might have something to do with the time in which Shakespeare is writing it, late 1590s, very early 1600. Part of the problem of the play deals with the idea of succession. The idea of succession was uppermost in the English populace's mind in 1600 when this play is performed. Why? Because Queen Elizabeth was really old and she didn't have an heir. Nobody knew what was going to happen when she died. She hadn't publicly announced who would take over. She does that secretly and privately. Nobody knows when she dies who's going to be the next king, other than probably the Lord Chamberlain and members of the Privy Council or the Star Chamber, okay? So, we get our dramatis personae, Ghost of Hamlet, former king of Denmark. And then we have Claudius, king of Denmark, the former king's brother. Gertrude, queen of Denmark, widow of the former king, and now wife of Claudius. What should that immediately tell us?
Suspect.
Something's wrong here. Why?
She shouldn't have 2 titles.
No, not necessarily.
I mean,
Shouldn't have those 2 titles. That's the problem.
Considered an incestuous relationship.
Within a Christian tradition, this is considered incest. You don't marry your dead brother's wife, okay? Excuse me. Yeah, that's right. Dead brother's wife. And you especially don't kill your now dead brother to marry his wife, okay? Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, son of the late king and of Gertrude, okay? So he's the son of the late king. According to the Germanic system of inheritance and succession, of which England is part, and it was up until 2014, up until about 10, 11, 12 years ago, when a monarch dies, who becomes monarch after? We just saw it with the end of Henry II, the eldest son, law primogeniture. In the strictly Germanic system, that wasn't automatic. It was 99% automatic, because in the German system, the monarch had a council of advisors. Those people elected that incoming monarch. And it was like, oh, you mean Joe, the son? Stamp. They just rubber stamped it, okay? So what does that mean? Who should be king? See, there's a problem. Just in the dramatis personae, there's immediately a problem. We're going to see something similar with Norway. Norway figures prominently in the play. There is tension between Norway and Denmark. if we had a map, Northern Europe's like this, Denmark, sticks up. So here's Northern Europe, Denmark sticks up like this, Sweden comes down over here, Finland's over here, Norway's over here, okay? Rest of Denmark's here. So Denmark's just this little promontory sticking up off the European mainland, okay? Norway's over here, as the play goes on, we're gonna find out the former king of Norway has been killed by the former king of Denmark. Hamlet Sr. killed Fortinbras Sr. All right? So now, Fortinbras Jr.'s uncle is king. Again, that's a problem. And Fortinbras Jr., wanting to prove himself, we find this out in the opening scene, is rattling sabers. He wants to prove himself, and he wants to retake some of the land his father lost. Okay? So Fortinbras Jr. is kind of in the same position as Hamlet. He should be king, but he isn't king. Okay? Now, we don't know why that is the situation with him. It could be that when his father was killed, Fortinbras Jr. was too young to rule. So his uncle kind of like stood behind him and flexed his muscles and, Lord Protector, as it were, or Regent, all right? So, other characters. Polonius, counselor to the king. He has two children, Laertes and Ophelia. And then we have a bunch of courtiers, okay? I just kind of like to call them bloodsuckers. They're like ticks living on the body politic. Then you have some soldiers and officers, Bernardo, Francisco, Marcellus. You have Fortinbras, Prince of Norway, a captain in his army. I forgot Horatio, Hamlet's friend. One very brief thing. Notice the names. This is all set in Denmark, Northern Europe, Germany, Scandinavian lands. These people should all have Germanic names. They don't. Hamlet is, Gertrude is, Voltimand kind of is, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Germanic, Osric is Germanic. Pretty much everybody else, they're Roman, Latin names. Just kind of odd to me. Anyways, go on to the beginning. So we have Bernardo and Francisco, two sentinels, and they meet. Okay? We're told the location. This says Elsinore Castle. Elsinore is not the name of the castle. Elsinore is the name of the town that the castle is located at. Okay? They're on a battlement of some kind. Bernardo comes out and asks a question. Who's there? Okay, so bear in mind, wrong one. Stage looks like this. Doors. They don't come out together. That is, they don't come out one door side by side. One comes out this door, one comes out this door. And that's why Bernardo says, who's there? He comes out and he hears a noise. Okay? He's standing guard. He's a sentinel. And Francisco responds, nay, answer me. Stand and fold yourself. Excuse me, unfold yourself. That is, no, I'm standing watch. You tell me who you are. But it begins with a question. Why is that significant? Or is that significant? The question implies you're unknowing, okay? You're looking for knowledge. You're seeking out something. I'm going to try to do this without giving the word away, or I could just give the word away. What is asking that kind of question, trying to get information from people? What government job type, so to speak, is that an aspect of? Yeah, Sarah's face tells me you're so far off, nobody's going to get it. What do you do when you eavesdrop?
Gathering.
It's an element of spying or espionage.
Gathering.
You're gathering information. The Old English epic poem Beowulf, the poet frequently says, I have heard. What that means is, I have inquired. I've asked, and this is what I've been told. And the poet goes on and says that several times. Here, we're going to hear sometimes, I have heard it said. That means, I've asked around, okay? So, who's there? Something's out there. The question presupposes the person who says the question is doing what? Observing, watching, right? They're on watch, they're sentinels, okay? That links to that comment that I mentioned earlier that Ophelia says about Hamlet, the observed of all observers. So the play begins with this sense of tension. Who's there? What's going on? Answer me, stand and unfold yourself. And Bernardo replies, long live the king. It's like a password. Bernardo, me. You come most carefully upon your hour, meaning, man, you're cutting it close. Why? Because Francisco wants to leave. His shift is done. We're going to find out in a moment what time it is. It's right around midnight. Okay? We're also going to find out what season it is. It's Christmas time. You're in Denmark. It's midnight. It's the middle of winter. It's cold. Okay? 'Tis now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco. In other words, I'm not late. I got here in time. Go to bed. For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart. What's the difference between being bitterly cold and sick at heart?
One's physical, the other's emotional.
One's physical, the other's emotional, spiritual, etc. Okay? He's not just going, brr, I can't wait to get wrapped up. Because even when he goes home and gets to bed, is that going to solve the sick at heartness? No. Have you had quiet guard? Any problems? Not a mouse stirring. That's where, by the way, Clement Moore gets not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. Okay? I should bring in this book I have called The Miracle of Language by a headmaster at a private school, prep school up in New England. And he has a chapter in there called A Man of Fire New Words. And it's all about Shakespeare. And it's about all the phrases that have entered the English language from Shakespeare. And within his chapter, the majority of those that he pulls out, they're from Hamlet. And he quotes a student saying, you know, I liked it except for all the quoting. The student liked Hamlet, except Hamlet was nothing but a bunch of quotes, not realizing it's later people quoting Hamlet, okay? He also points out in that chapter, Shakespeare created 1,700 words of his known vocabulary. That is 1/8 of the entire vocabulary in the Shakespearean corpus. He invented. Used them for the first time, okay? Things like, get the duct tape, exist. First use. Nobody else had used that before. And a whole bunch of others. So, He says, it was a good evening. It was a quiet night. If you see Horatio or Marcellus, tell them to hurry. Why? Because Bernardo doesn't want to be there all alone. See, notice it's kind of implied that the midnight watch, from midnight to whatever hour early in the morning, there's going to be two people watching. Horatio is not part of the normal watch. He's been called along for a specific purpose. Francisco is alone in his watch. Why? Because it's not the graveyard shift. He probably starts as the sun sets, okay? Not as much stuff going on. It's more dangerous in the overnight hours. So, Horatio Marcellus come in. Stand ho, who's there? Friends to this ground, liegemen to the day. In other words, okay, you're clear. Okay? So, Bernardo says, is Horatio there? Horatio, yep, I'm here. Horatio asks, has this thing appeared again tonight? Bernardo, I've seen nothing. My watch has been silent, quiet. Marcellus, Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy, and will not let belief take hold of him touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. Notice how he puts that. He will not let belief take hold of him, not, and he doesn't believe us. Okay? Why not?
Because he wouldn't accuse someone of lying, it's just that because of what they're saying, he would need proof of having seen it.
He would need proof having seen it. In other words, pre-Photoshop. Seeing is believing, right? Pre-AI deepfakes, which, I don't know about you, but man, I dread the world you guys are going to be my age in.
You won't know what's real or not.
You're going to start wondering, is this the re-allegory of the cave? Is everything unreal?
I'm just curious
Is
how
the Matrix real?
Philip K. Dick wrote what he did, and yet we have AI. Like, why have we done that to ourselves?
Michael Crichton answers that question in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
That's fair.
How does he answer it? Anybody remember? Ian Malcolm.
You never stop to ask yourself, like, why?
He says, John, you've got all these tools. You think you could, but you never stop to ask, should I? There are scientists today, I read an article about it just the other day, we are this close to bringing back the mastodon. Mastodons have been dead since 12,000 BC.
Why would we do that?
Because they're big and fuzzy and cute.
No!
I mean, think what's his name in Ice Age? Manny. He's cute. He's fuzzy. He's got Ray Romano's voice. I mean, you want to, as Ian Malcolm says, again in Jurassic Park, there's a reason there's 100 million years between us and T-Rex. Because T-Rex were food. If T-Rex wasn't a scavenger, as some now think. So it's that question of, not can I, but should I?
So is this, because you said the thing about, like, it's starting off with that tension, and then they say, like, long live the king. So is there tension because of, like, the mysterious, like, ghost thing, or is there tension because of, like, is he sick of heart because it's, like, it's kind of a creepy area, or because it's, like, there's stuff wrong with the state of the nation, and it's, like, it's a weird area.
It's more the latter, but that comes out later. The tension right here is, why are we on watch? We're gonna hear very soon. They're gonna ask, why are we at watch? In other words, the implication is we're at peace. We shouldn't be at watch. And I think it is Horatio is going to answer why they're at watch. And Shakespeare slowly unfolds, gives us the exposition we need to understand that, and why the ghost will appear the way he does. Okay? So, Horatio doesn't believe because he hasn't seen it.
Not because he doubts that it's possible.
No, I wouldn't go that far yet. Hamlet's gonna tell Horatio, next scene, take that back, next scene, 1, 2, 3, scene 4. Hamlet's gonna go keep watch with them. He's gonna see the ghost, talk to the ghost, all that. And Horatio goes, this is a wondrous strange day and night. Kind of like when Hippolyta says to Theseus, 'tis wondrous strange that these lovers speak of, meaning the dreams, so-called. And Hamlet's going to say, there is more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. And he says that for a reason, which I'll get to when we get there. And it has something to do with Horatio's philosophical outlook, all right? So, notice, by the way, Marcellus says, we've seen this thing twice. So if it shows up this night, that'll be the third time. Okay? Horatio, 'twill not appear. See, that gets to your comment, Sarah. He doesn't think it's possible. Why? How many of you believe in ghosts? Probably even if you do, you're not going to raise your hand. Maybe. How many of you have seen a ghost? Put it that way. Most people go, no, because I'd be changing my shorts if I did, kind of a. Let us tell you, all right? So Bernardo says, last night, let's see, when yon same star that's westward from the pole had made its course to illumine that part of heaven, well, where it is right now. Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating 1. So when Bernardo first showed up, the clock had just struck 12. Now, seemingly, an hour has gone by. Okay? And he says, the bell then beating 1, and the ghost enters. He's a very punctual ghost. That's nice to know. Okay? If you don't want to see him, wait a while. Peace, break thee off, look where it comes again. Bernardo, in the same figure like the king that's dead. What does that mean in the same figure?
He looks like it.
Dead ringer, pun intended, for the king. Marcellus, thou art a scholar, speak to it, Horatio. You've got a gloss there. Let me see if this is the same gloss as it says in my, oh, it's good, it's not. My intro to lit book says, Horatio, being a scholar, would know Latin. Therefore, he would know how to perform an exorcism. It's utterly asinine.
The
Okay?
whole procedure.
Yeah, he would know Latin because the universities were conducted in Latin, right? Has nothing to do with performing an exorcism, however. Your gloss here says, one learned enough to know how to question a ghost properly. Again, I find that maybe not asinine, but funny. How does one question a ghost properly? I mean, does a ghost have particular pronouns, or do you, my most highly esteemed ghost, or how do you know if you're going to offend a ghost? What does Marcellus mean?
So was
You're probably the most qualified to talk to the king.
Okay, possibly. What else? I'm just a dumb grunt, man. I'm a soldier. What's my job? Kill people.
Watch.
You're a student at university. You know more than I do. You don't speak good or English,
So
You're
is,
gonna-
is when you said Horatio's not generally on guard, is he, did they like basically, is it
They invited him along.
to talk to the ghost specifically?
No, to see the
Or
ghost.
to see it?
They want Horatio to believe them.
Okay.
And they know the only way he's going to believe them is if he has Othello's ocular proof. I see it with my own eyes. Okay? The problem with that, however, is what? It's almost Shakespeare's favorite theme.
Seems.
Yep. versus reality. And where are we? We're back to Plato's blanking allegory of the cave. What is really real? Read the Velveteen Rabbit. It'll tell you what's really real. Okay? Has nothing to do with a cave. Anyways, Bernardo, doesn't it look like the king? Notice, looks not like the king. What is like in that word, in that sentence? What's it indicate? It's indicating, introducing a simile. My brain is working faster than my mouth this morning. So, Horatio, most like. It is most like the king. Harrows me with fear and wonder. What does harrow mean? Please tell me there's not there's not, thank you. My intro lit textbook says harrows, has a gloss, lacerates the feelings. What does it mean to lacerate?
Cut.
To cut. How do you cut your feelings? Makes no sense at all. What does harrow mean?
Plowing a field, right?
Okay, you plow a field, you use a harrow to do that. There's a deeper meaning.
It cuts deep and overturns.
Kind of. There's a meaning. The word is used in English translations of the Bible and early Christian literature. Okay? To refer to, it's called the harrowing. Okay? To refer to what Christ does while his body is in the grave. So the soul of Jesus, while the body is in the grave, does what's called the harrowing of hell. Read the Old English poem, The Dream of the Rood. And the cross tells the dreamer that while his body was in hell, Jesus went, while the body was in the grave, Jesus went down to hell. Let me rephrase that. Shouldn't be hell. Should be Hades. Hell and Hades are two very, very different things. Hades is the place of the dead. According to Old Testament Jewish ideas, everybody went to Hades. Most righteous person, most rotten person. You all went to Hades. It's just the place of the dead. Okay? So, Jesus went down to the place of the dead in this idea and harrowed them out of it. That is, raised them out of that. And took them, the righteous, to the bosom of the Father, to the bosom of Abraham. You know, he gives the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, and Lazarus dies and is in the bosom of Abraham, and the rich man is in torment. All right? All of that, the bosom of Abraham and the torment, that's all part of Hades, so to speak. So you can be in Hades and not be suffering, or you can be in Hades and really suffering. The harrowing of hell is Christ bringing the righteous dead, beginning with Adam, ending with John the Baptist, last one, righteous one to die before he does, and bringing them up to heaven. So when it says, it harrows me, he's kind of like saying, this has taken my soul from me. Or, to put it in a colloquial slang sense, it scares the hell out of me. It opens, to use the plowing, it opens me up. The harrowing is the opening of death and bringing the dead out. Okay? Speak to it. What art thou that usurps this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak. Notice, what art thou? He doesn't ask, who art thou? Why not?
It's a ghost.
What would who presuppose?
It's someone.
Bingo, it's a person, or it's the ghost of a person. What implies you might not be what you appear to be. Okay? And what is whatever this thing doing? It is usurping two things. Usurping, taking rightful ownership of, or taking rightful control of. That is, the control isn't rightful. The control belongs to something else that this thing is taking. It's wrongfully taking control of. Two things. One, the time of night. And we'll find out a little bit why in just a moment. And what else? Together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march. What are you taking the form of the dead king? That implies it may not be a ghost. By heaven I charge thee. That's an oath. That's a vow. In my other textbook, the reason it probably gives the thing about Horatio being a scholar can speak Latin and therefore it can exorcise the ghost, it's probably because of this line. By heaven I charge thee, what must an exorcist have in order to be able to play with the idea, accept, the premises and all as being true, in order for the exorcist to be able to do his job, because exorcists are male, priests. What must they have in order to do that? Other than holy water, a crucifix, image of Mary, whatever.
Gotta be ordained.
If a priest, yeah, they gotta be ordained. What else?
Backing of God.
Keep going. You're really close.
Righteousness.
Keep going. They have to have belief. They got to believe it. In other words, you can't say, by the name of Jesus I command, if you don't believe in Jesus. All right? Passage in the New Testament, one of Paul's letters, I think you take it back, it's in the book of Acts. Somebody tries to cast out a demon, and the demon speaks and goes, see, I know Jesus, I know Paul, you I don't know. Kind of meaning, you have no power over me, okay? Speak, it doesn't speak. Why not? We don't know why not. Probably because it only has words for Hamlet to hear. There is another possibility. This is way down on the possibility list. I'm going to throw it out there anyways. When he says, by heaven I charge thee, speak, what does the by heaven mean? By God. What if you don't believe in God? Not going to work. Okay? Marcellus, it is offended. How do we know it's offended? Because of the next line. Those are verbal stage directions by Shakespeare. He's telling the person playing the ghost, okay, here's what I want you to do after Horatio charges you. Start walking away. And then, Marcellus, you're going to say, it is offended. Because there can be a pause between Marcellus speaking and Bernardo speaking. See, it stalks away. And I would love, part of me would love to see this. Monty Python would do this great. Man, I'd love to see Monty Python do Hamlet back in their prime. It is offended. What could you have as a director? What could you ask the ghost to do at that point? You kind of tell me you're getting in a, flip them off. So, Bernardo, how now, Horatio? In other words, you still full of disbelief? You tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? More than mere airy nothings, to quote Theseus? What think you on it? Notice how he doesn't say, how do you feel? Tell me how this makes you feel, Horatio. Horatio, Before my God, I might not disbelieve without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes. Now, before my God, means what? He believes in God. Okay? Horatio is often referred to by critics and readers as a Stoic. That is, he's a believer in Stoic philosophy. Okay? What does that mean? There is no God. There's no hell. There's no divine reward. There's no divine punishment. This is it, folks. You're born, you live your few years, you die, end of story. Consciousness, soul, whatever, just dissipates with your atoms. Okay? So when he says, before my God, if you accept that as Horatio's character, there's a problem here. So is he a Stoic or is he not? Notice, I couldn't believe this if I hadn't seen it with my own two eyes. Marcellus, is it not like the king? Like appearance, the king, reality. Using a simile again. Notice Horatio's response. It's just genius on Shakespeare's part. As thou art to thyself. It is as like the king, Marcellus, as you are to yourself. Well, how are you like to yourself?
Well, I have to be exactly like myself.
It's an absurd question, right? Because you are you. You are not somebody else. Classic logic. A cannot be non-A. Or you can switch the letters. B cannot be non-B. Okay? Yeah. So, he says, he was wearing that same armor when the ambitious Norway combated. That is, when he fought the ambitious Norway. Notice Horatio's giving us a little tiny clue there as to who began the hostilities between Norway and Denmark. It was Norway, okay? So, Marcellus says, we've seen this 2 times before at the very same time. Horatio, in what particular thought to work I know not, but in the gross and scope of mine opinion, this bodes some strange eruption to our state. That is, something's wrong, folks. There will be an eruption. There will be what? A rupture in our state. Okay? So Marcellus says, why are we keeping watch? He's getting to the, what's the problem with the state? And Horatio said, oh, I can tell you that. And he tells us the background of Fortinbras of Norway. Okay. Our last king, whose image even now but appeared to us, was, as you know, by Fortinbras of Norway, thereto pricked on by most emulate pride, dared to the combat. That is, Fortinbras, senior of Norway, challenged Hamlet, senior, to combat. That might mean single combat so that a bunch of men didn't have to die, or it could mean he just marched on us and Hamlet Sr. destroyed him. Okay? And now, young Fortinbras, what? Taking in Daddy's footsteps, he wants to try to regain some of that land that he lost, that his father lost. Okay? Bernardo says, I think you're right. And he goes on and says that it comes through the hour watch, so like the king that was and is the question of these wars. This portentous figure comes. Okay? Horatio. A mote it is to trouble the mind's eye. A mote, a speck of dust. Why does it trouble the mind's eye? Well, if you've ever had dust or sand or something like that in your eye, it makes the eye uncomfortable. So you rub it to try to get it out, which makes it even more uncomfortable. He says this is a mote to do what? To trouble the mind's eye. What happens when your mind gets troubled? You don't think straight. Why? Oh, I like the language. Straight line. Instead, your mind does what?
It's distracted.
It kind of goes in circles or wanders or meanders. Or if there's something troubling you, what is your mind doing? It's focused on that one thing. I had a student email me last night, said, not going to be in class tomorrow. I feel like I'm dead. Life has no meaning, blah, blah, blah. And I sent the person a little note this morning. I said, hope to get feeling better. Get outside, get in the sun, go for a walk, go where it's green. Believe me, it'll help. Get away from everything else, okay? And he goes on and does what? He talks about, and today's a few days later, Julius Caesar. Shakespeare had just written Caesar in 1595 or 97. It was closer than that. 99. A year before, okay? What happened on March 15th? The Ides of March. The soothsayer tells Caesar, beware the Ides of March. His wife tells him, Calpurnia, beware, and he doesn't. And he gets killed. Well, what happened before his assassination? This isn't just in Shakespeare, okay? These are stories that go back to almost the time of Caesar. There were eclipses in the sky, there were shooting stars. Some of the thing about the graves being open and the dead walking, ghost comes in again. So Horatio goes to speak to it. I'll cross it though it blast me. And you have a stage direction. It spreads his arms. Okay? Your gloss tells you his is its arms, the ghost's. My other textbook has some real strange suggestion. I don't remember what it is. Oh, it spreads the ghost's or Horatio's arms. So like the ghost comes up to Horatio and pulls his arm and does this. Okay, if you're going to cross me, the implication is what? Make yourself into a cross. What does he mean when he says, I'll cross it? It means I'll cross its path. But cross also means I will stop it. Okay? So, if thou hast any sound or use of voice, speak. So can you speak? It doesn't speak. If there be any good thing to be done that may do thee ease and grace to me, speak to me. Well, there's a lot in those two lines. Any good thing to be done that may do what? Ease to you and grace to me. How can a good thing that Horatio can do for the ghost bring grace to Horatio? And what's meant by grace? Possibly. This is probably spiritual grace. This is where the religious stuff starts to ooze out. What's he talking about? If I can do a good deed, that will do what? Bring ease to you and grace to me. Well, ease to the ghost would be grace to it. Okay? Grace that he's talking about is favor of God. Shakespeare's day, Christians of both Catholic and Protestant stripe thought doing good deeds draws down the favor of God upon you. Why? Because Paul talks about it. The book of James is entirely about You can't have faith alone. You got to have, your faith is proven by your good deeds. Okay? But the part about how can it bring ease to the ghost? We don't know yet. All right? If thou art privy to thy country's fate, which happily foreknowing may avoid, speak. See, there's a logical conundrum there. If it's fate, what? It can't be avoided. And that presupposes a condition for the ghost. What condition? When do ghosts exist? After death here, that is, they were alive here, and then they died. What time do you exist in when you're dead? Is my point. None. You're outside time. I mean, we're in Twilight Zone land, right? How are you outside time?
You can't have an effect on you.
All kinds of literature, religious and non-religious, talk about being outside life is to be outside time. It's to be eternal. So eternal doesn't necessarily mean living forever. That's being immortal. Eternal means to just be outside time. And in fact, in a moment, we're going to hear either the ghost or Hamlet talk about the ghost being beyond time. How can the ghost know what is going to happen in the future to Denmark if it exists within time? If it exists within time, then how does time happen to the ghost? Yesterday, today, tomorrow. Read Emily Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Great little poem. Too busy to stop for death, so death did what? Death pulled up to her door and said, hop in. In other words, time's up. And the whole poem is about the movement of the soul beyond time, as it were. Because what seemed like yesterday is now centuries and centuries and centuries later. Okay? Or, final appeal, if thou hast uphoarded in thy life extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walk in death, speak. He's playing on an old English idea. I don't know if it's in other cultures also, but it's this idea that ghosts come back, the dead come back. One of the reasons, at least, is they come back to right a wrong. Okay? He's talking about a specific wrong here. The specific wrong is that you buried treasure in the earth. The point is, the treasure doesn't do anybody any good when it's buried in the earth. What's the purpose of treasure? What's the purpose of money? To be used. Okay? And in the British Christian system, it's not to be used solely for yourself. A couple of old English poems are entirely about almsgiving. Okay?
Could it be a reference to the parable of the talents?
Yeah, it could be. But notice, it's extorted treasure. The parable of the talents were freely given. This is money you've unlawfully gained, or wealth you've unlawfully gained. Okay? And so when he says speak, why? I'll go dig it up and I'll distribute it.
So is Horatio trying to set this thing free, or is he trying to just know, like, what are you?
Both. Both. He's kind of, if you tell me something I can do for you, I will do it, he's implying, right? So, Marcellus, shall I hit it with my partisan? A long handle with like a spear point and a blade on the end. It's a ghost. How's it going to hurt a ghost? And they talk about that, okay? Rooster crows, and they talk about what the rooster crow signifies. And we get more folk belief, English folk belief. Horatio, I have heard that the cock, when it crows, it awakes the god of day, and any ghost that is wandering the earth must go back to its rightful place. Okay? Marcellus says, yeah, and some say that during the season of our Savior's birth, Christmas time, the cock crows throughout the day and night. Why? To make sure that no dead thing is wandering the earth. Why? Because it's a time of Christ's nativity. There should be peace and such. Okay? So, Horatio said, I kind of believe that. Let's tell Hamlet and have him keep the watch. I thought we would get through a lot farther than this. Scene 2. We have the king and queen and Ophelia, Polonius, Hamlet, all come in. This should be a scene of great pomp and circumstance. The Kenneth Branagh version does this scene exceptionally well. I mean, they just didn't worry about the cost for the lavish decoration and costuming and such. So the king gives a long initial speech. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green, meaning he's not been dead long. And that it us befitted to bear our hearts in grief and our whole kingdom to be contracted in one brow of woe. That is, we had an entire country mourn his death, like when JFK was assassinated. Even Republicans, who did not like Kennedy, mourned. Yet so far hath discretion fought with nature, that we with wisest sorrow think on him, together with remembrance of ourselves. That is, we think of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, but we don't stop thinking of ourselves. He's using the royal we. I thought of myself at the same time. Okay? But there might be an element there of the memento mori. Remembrance of death. In which Claudius is suggesting, Hamlet died. That made me think, I'm going to die too. So what does he say? Therefore, because I'm thinking of Hamlet's death, and because I'm thinking I will die too, our sometime sister, now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state, have we as 'twere with a defeated joy, that is a joy that is less joyful, and with an auspicious and a dropping eye, that is tearing eye, with mirth and funeral. This isn't like an Irish wake funeral, where you go and you bury the dead person and you cry, and then you just get blasted and hammered, okay? With mirth and funeral, and with dirge and marriage, in equal scale, weighing delight and dole, delight and sorrow, taken to wife. Thinking Hamlet died made me think of my life, and how empty it is, and I married his wife. Nor have we herein borrowed your better wisdoms, which have freely gone with this affair along. What does that last, which have freely gone with this affair along, mean?
It means the wisdoms have been gone as long as this affair has been going on.
No. You've gone along with this decision. He's speaking to his counselors and advisors. You all agreed to this wedding. It's a way of doing what? Spreading the blame? So, he talks about Fortinbras of Norway and sends Cornelius and Voltimand off on their way. He asks Laertes what he's still doing there. Shouldn't he be back at university? He's a student at the University of Paris. He says, my father's given me leave. He says, okay, you can leave. And then he addresses Hamlet. But now, like 64, my cousin Hamlet and my son. Cousin. What does that mean? Distant family relation. Not immediate. Not nuclear family. And my son, however, you don't get more nuclear than that. Hamlet takes his meaning and gives us, usually the text has a side written here. So that when Hamlet says, a little more than kin and less than kind, only the audience hears that, nobody else on the stage. Usually in an aside, nobody else on the stage hears that. It's only meant for the audience. Okay? But what does it mean, a little more than kin and less than kind? We're a little closer than just kin. Why? Uncle, nephew. And in Germanic society, the uncle-nephew relationship was actually the strongest familial bond. That was stronger than father-son. We have no idea why. And more specifically, it's sister's son. That is, sister's brother to the son. That's why Tolkien uses it in The Lord of the Rings. We see it in all kinds of Germanic literature. All right? So, Hamlet says, we're a little bit more than just kin and less than kind. Kind there has its superficial meaning, nice, gentle. So a little less than nice and gentle. It also means natural, like the natural order of things. And less than kind means this is unnatural. What's the part that's unnatural? Son. You shouldn't be able to call me son. How is it that the clouds still hang on you? How do the clouds hang on Hamlet? Is he walking around like Eeyore in the old Disney Winnie the Pooh show with the cloud and the rain pouring? No. We're going to find out in just a moment. Hamlet, not so, my lord. I am too much in the sun. How so? So here's the sun. Here's the earth. You could get all the other planets. How does the earth look from the moon? Blue marble, right? Why? Does the earth give off its own light? Nope. The sun reflects light off the earth, just like the sun reflects light off the moon. Hamlet is saying, I am too much in your sunlight. Why? Because the king is the center of society. The king is the sun that the state revolves around. What's Hamlet's point? I need to get out of here. I'm too close to the center. Hamlet normally is not there, by the way. He's a student at Wittenberg University. Okay? So, Queen, good Hamlet, cast thy nighted color off. Ah, that's why he's in the clouds, or why the clouds hang on him. He wears dark clothes. He wears black clothes. And let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. Do not forever with thy veiled lids seek for thy noble father in the dust. What does she mean with his veiled lids? Does he walk around all the time, eyes closed? No. He walks around all the time with his head facing downward. That's why she says, seeking thy father in the dust. Someone who comes towards Hamlet and sees him, they don't see his eyes, they see his eyelids. Thou know'st 'tis common, all that lives must die, passing through nature, and there it is, to eternity. When you're dead, you're off in eternity. That's where the ghost is. Okay? Aye, madam, it's common. What's the it is common? Everything that lives dies. Period. Then why seems it so particular with thee? why does death seem so particular with you? Ouch.
Yikes.
How long has Hamlet's father been dead?
A month.
We don't know yet. All we know is that the memory of his death is yet green. It hasn't dried out from time passing. We don't have time to get into scenes, madam, because that'll probably take me 10 or 15 minutes just to do those 12 lines or so. So, we'll stop there. If you came in after I announce this, the exam is no longer due a week from today. It is due Tuesday, April 4th. April 2nd. Tuesday, April 2nd. Okay? We will get a lot farther. I say we'll get a lot farther. We'll get through Act 1, Scene 2 on Tuesday, I'm sure. No, we'll get through a lot farther. Have a good weekend.